Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the APM How Does Change Management Enable Project Success webinar. My name is Nina Hartley. I represent the Southwest of England and Wales chapter, currently in Exeter, down in Devon. And I'm joined tonight with Donna Unitt from the Enabling Change SIG. A couple of housekeeping things just before we get started. So you'll have seen that we've got a Slido up and running tonight. We've got some polls throughout the presentations. If you could use that, we'd be really interested to see your responses and get some engagement in the presentation. Helps us know that you're out there and listening and joining in. Also, there's a chat function where you can lodge any questions and we'll be fielding those through the panel at the end. So if you can pop them in there, we'll keep an eye on those. In terms of things that are happening with APM at the moment, we've got some various webinars going on at lunchtimes and in the evening. And from the Southwest chapter, we've got a networking event coming up on the 15th of June, looking at the changes of risk since we've been in pandemic. So how do you manage risk and how's that changing as a result of the world changing around us? On the 30th of June, we've got a presentation from the Institute of Asset Management about asset management, as you'd expect. Now, on the 1st of July, there's another risk one of developing a mature risk mindset. This is Dr. David Hilson, so talking about how do you progress and get the most out of your risk management. And then on the 6th of July, we've got digital delivery by a speaker from Dermot MacDonald. So very apt at the moment, with a lot of us going through transformation and embracing the digital world. We look forward to hearing your feedback on all of our events, and you will receive a form in a few days' time. Please do fill that in and provide us with any topics you'd like to hear about, because that's what helps us form our programme. Also, the recording from tonight will be published via the website. It takes about 5 working days to turn that around, and you should receive a link or it's available through the APM website. So thank you very much for attending. From now on, I'll be handing you over to Donna Unitt to talk about change management. Thank you.
Thanks, Nina. Good evening, everyone. My name's Donna Unitt. I'm going to be talking about change management this evening. Hopefully you've seen the Slido barcode at the bottom and the hashtag. If you can join that, there'll be a number of polls that we'll run through. There's roughly about 4. So if you can all participate in those, that would be most helpful. Okay. So this is the agenda. I'm going to do a bit of an introduction to myself and a bit around the SIG that I represent, the objectives of the session. Then we're going to cover what change management is, and more importantly, what it isn't, because it does get confusing. We talk about change and how personal it is, and some of the methods and the methodologies, etc., that you can use. Slightly touch on change and agile, because there's a little bit of a synergy there. And then summary and takeaways at the end, and then we'll refer to questions. Obviously, you can put questions in the question box, as Nina said, as we go through, and we'll pick them up at the end. So just to introduce myself, I've got a background in supply chain logistics, mainly IT. So worked in that industry for about 25 years. I used to work for DHL, previous to that, Excel and BRS Logistics. More recently, I work for a company called Rocket Consulting, which is an SAP Gold partner. I've got over 20 years experience delivering change and transformation programs and projects, mainly in supply chain and IT. I'm also certified in change management, APMP, and also an Agile PM practitioner. Been a member of the APM for probably around about 19 years, and I'm chair of the Enabling Change SIG and have been for the last 3 years. Previous to that, I was also a committee member for probably 2 years before that. So that's a little bit about me. So as you're aware, APM has special interest groups, which there are a number of, and I'm part of the Enabling Change SIG. So our mission is really to improve the change capability of organisations, teams and individuals. We've got a very active committee, albeit reasonably small. Obviously, the nominations, etc., are out for the new committee that starts in September. So if you're interested, please put yourself forward. That would be good. Our main focus over the past year, as with every SIG and branch, has been webinars and mainly blogs. We've run a number of webinars on leading change with some guest speakers, and we've also done a really good quarterly event now in conjunction with the People SIG and the Change Management Institute, which is another body that sort of represents change management. The next one of those quarters, we did one in February, I think the next quarter one is in June, so look out for that. I think it's the back end of June, so that'll be obviously advertised as an event on the APM website. Main focus on the blogs that we've done more recently. We've got one guy who works in the civil service who's done a number of blogs around Brexit and changes around that sort of area. I myself have done a couple, so I've done coaching and change management and how coaching can help assist with changes, and also around bias. We're all biased in some shape or form, and how that has an effect also on change management. So if you're interested in those, obviously they're on our web, our microsite within the APM website. Okay, so some of the objectives around this session, really, it's to provide you with an overview of what change management is and what it isn't. I'm taking most of you are probably new to change management who've joined. How change applies to projects and how it can make it more successful, and really get you thinking about how you incorporate change management into your projects going forward. So hopefully that fits with what everyone's expecting. So jumping on to a poll, just to get a feel of where people are from and their role. Obviously, if you log on to Slido, so do you class yourself as a project manager or a program manager or a projects director type, a PMO, a change manager? Is that in your title, or a change agent, which is another term we'll come on to later for those who aren't aware of it? Or are you in another category? Obviously, we can't list every single job role that might be on here, but it's just useful to get an idea of the types of people that we've got on the call. Okay, so let's just run it up. I can see about half people have responded roughly at the moment. Obviously, project manager is what we'd expect to see. I'll give it another minute just to give people a chance to get that in. A few more, not really swinging it. Obviously, project manager is way out there in the lead, as you'd expect. PMO, yeah, we generally get quite a few PMO people on these webinars. Program manager and projects director, yeah. Change manager, we've got a small percentage there, which is good. And I don't think we've got anything for change agent. Okay, so roughly 52 in. So that's probably about 2/3. So okay, we'll leave it there. I'll give people enough time. Sorry, my chair's having a bit of a wobbly. So yeah, so mainly project managers, as we would expect, which is good. Okay, so to give you a bit of an overview on what change management is. So just to set the scene, the APM body of knowledge definition. So change management is a structured approach to moving an organisation from its current state to a desired future state. So if we think about it, project management is about an installation. It's focusing on a plan built around events and time. Change management is more around the adoption. It's about getting the critical mass of people committed to sustain that change. We'll come on to this in more detail. So that's just to give you some definitions and some setting the scene of what the differences between change management and project management. So if we take this example, so it's really about moving people from the as is, where we are now, to the to be, so the desired future state. and I'm from an IT background, so I apologise, but I will use IT sort of examples, which I'm sure you can all relate to. So if I think about in my world, we focus around systems, technology, operations, and processes, or people. We use the term STOP: systems, technology, operations, people, process. And in IT projects, what you find mainly is projects focus on the systems and the technology. They forget about the importance of the actual changes to an operation, changes to processes, and changes to people. And change management really is the development and implementation of strategies that deal with the impact on those people and the operations and the processes when new systems or technology goes in as part of a project. Or it could be a new building, or it could be another business change. And it's really about the change management is really about the focus on those people, those operations, those processes to accelerate the successful implementation of that project that you're part of. So the expectations of change, when we look at a project or a program, we look at the desired outcome is that that change becomes fully embedded and the sustainable benefits are realised. But what can happen, and what does happen in a lot of situations, is that the change isn't fully embedded. The change is in, the project's finished. The actual benefits of that change are not fully realised and sustained because the people implementing that change and part of its success are not fully engaged in the project or the change in the first place. So we use the term in IT, and obviously this relates to other projects as well, but we look at installation versus implementation. So very often you find that projects and changes will focus on just the installation, so the project side of things. And the success for that installation is on time, on budget, and that the objectives have been met. And it's in and it's done and dusted. What isn't focused on is the business objectives and the human objectives on those being met. And that's really the implementation side. So it's about extending the breadth of the project to look at the whole life cycle and its benefits post-project rather than just stopping when the project's finished. And this is one of the reasons that organisations don't reap the full benefits of anything that they implement. And the reasons why a number of projects fail. I mean, you can have a successful project. Yes, it was installed, it was on time, it was on budget. But it can be unsuccessful because obviously the benefits aren't realised, the people aren't using the new system or the new process or the new way of working. So we need change management, and that sort of fills in the gap. So that fills in the gap of the business objectives and the human objectives. So we're looking at why projects fail generally. Obviously, this is not an exhaustive list, but this is a common list of why projects fail. If you could just log on to Slido and vote on this poll, your top 3, that would be really good. I can't see all of them on this slide, so I'm not sure they're all visible, but they should be visible, obviously, on Slido. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to look at that. Obviously, you've all got experience of projects because most of you are project managers, which is good, or change managers or project directors. So yeah, this is just to give a view of why you think projects generally fail. It's quite interesting that you've got vision. Yeah, vision's unclear. Yeah, that's coming out as the top one at the moment. Communication, business case being unclear. give it a little bit longer because there's quite a bit to read on there and get your head round. It's got 44, roughly about half, I think, of people have responded there. Okay, we've got 50 respondents now, so I think we'll look at the results. So communicating has just overtaken slightly. Vision is unclear. So communicating without really engaging. Yeah, that's key, and we're going to come on to that. So that's obviously a major one, and that's obviously linked to change management, not engaging the people that are actually going to be part or implementing the change. Vision being unclear again. Yeah, that's really part of change management. It's not understood. Not everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet. Business case being unclear. Yeah, again, there's quite a lot of projects that are done without a valid or a sound business case. And then fourth, we've got lack of project sponsor commitment. Again, yeah, that really is also part of change management. So yeah, that's interesting. I think the top two are virtually neck and neck. So there's not much in those two. Okay, well we'll cover obviously definitely communicating is a big topic within change management. So we'll cover that one a little bit later on. Thanks for your input, everyone. Okay, so we've looked at broadly what change management is. We'll now look at what it isn't. Change management can get confused a lot of the time. So people who are not familiar with the term, and you may often hear organisational change management as well, just to differentiate it between things like on this list, change control of scope or change control within quality management systems. So change control and change management often get confused. Also, IT change management, obviously when you make a change to a system and that change goes through a rigorous amount of regression testing and then gets put into a live environment, etc., that gets termed as change management as well, but that's really in relation to Untitled, which is the infrastructure library, and the way you put sort of code and IT changes into practice. That gets confused with the type of change management we're talking about. So yeah, so you will hear different terms, and some people say, oh yeah, I know what change management is, but what they're actually talking about is something totally different, like change control, where you've got a change control board or a change authority board that sign off scope and scope changes or budget changes within a project. They refer to that as change management. So you'll often hear the term organisational change management, which is covering what we're doing. So I just wanted to make it clear what it's not, because it does get confused. So change is personal. So change is everywhere, and change is a necessity for survival. And the timescales of change are becoming ever more compressed, especially around technology. For one, I mean, we're constantly seeing new technology coming around. And COVID, obviously, I hate to mention the word because I know everyone's sick of it, but hit us last year, and we all had to adapt, whether we liked it or not, to change very quickly. It was a change that affected everyone in some shape or form, which is very unusual, as most changes usually only affect certain people. But this one hit everyone. So if you think about how you reacted to change, then you probably went through a series of emotions during that change that are highlighted in the change curve at the bottom that was developed by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who, when she moved to the US in the late 50s, she was shocked by the way that hospitals that she worked in dealt with dying patients and the 5 stages of grief. that then developed into change. And there are different formats of this, so the wording, etc., might be slightly different to what you've seen before. This actually shows 7 stages, but yes, some of them are 5, some of them are 6, but it's all based around the same concept of the change curve. So if you think about COVID, I mean, we very quickly had to, everyone became Zoom experts. I mean, I know we're using GoToWebinar now, but everybody became experts on using Zoom. We live our lives on it, most of us, certainly as project managers who are working virtually at the moment, or Microsoft Teams obviously became a way of life, and also the working from home and the juggling home and work life, etc. That was a change that impacted everybody. And I'm sure if you think about it, you all went through some sort of change curve. Some will have gone through it quicker than others. And some may still be in the downward spiral of what they term as depression, which is sort of a low mood, lacking in energy. And we can all resonate with this because of the change that we've been through. And although COVID has obviously hit everyone really, really hard, it's also helped us focus on actually what change is, and everyone's been through that cycle. So just to go through the change curve in a little bit more detail. So most people start off, this is important to understand really, the way that people deal with change, that it's personal and it's emotional, and it's not, it's different for everyone. It's not one rule fits all. So shock and denial. So after you've been confronted with a change, it'll often be resisted by lack of engagement. We've all seen people turn off, no engagement, etc. They try and forget that it's happening. Then they have this burst of defensive energy, which is normal, and this can be mixed with sort of firmness and empathy at the same time. We then go through sort of anger and blame, where we deny and that we say that it's not fair, and we don't. But what we need to do is not really minimalise the losses that people feel. We all experience things in different ways. Then there can be some bargaining and self-blame. So blame can turn inwards, that it's our fault, that it's something wrong with us. And then some people can go into this depression and confusion, sort of bottom end curve, where they drive to hold on to fight for the former situation. There's a realisation that they're losing a battle, that they're not winning, that the change is going to happen anyway. And we need some good support structures in place for that period. And then there's really a process of maybe experimentation. So they might engage with a new solution. They might try and find out a bit more about it, try and look at it from a bit more of a positive angle. They might accept it a little bit more. They might start problem solving. So they start to play with it a little bit. They learn how it works, how it's going to feel in the new situation, then start to look at the positives of it, and then eventually go through that sort of integration phase where a change can be integrated and accepted. People are looking at it, what's in it for me, how can I make the best of it, it's going to happen anyway. Or you might lose some people along that change curve. They might say, this isn't for me, I'm off, I'm going to do something else. And everyone's on this curve at a different time. Not everybody goes through the curve at the same rate. So change management really is about identifying the people, identifying those stakeholders and all those people that you need to get on board for your change. And then working out where they are along this curve and then helping them get from one side of it to the other as quickly as possible. That's really what change management's about. And sort of helping them move through that curve. And obviously there's lots of different tools and methodologies and techniques, and I'm going to touch on a few of them from a top level, and obviously that'll give you some idea of what you could investigate further on down the line if you want some more information. So change really is all about acceptance, so that there's sort of an equation here. So change times the acceptance equals effectiveness. And this, I showed this diagram earlier, but without the acceptance curve at the bottom. You don't go from as is to be in a straight line. That's never going to happen. You are going to go through the change curve, as Kubler-Ross describes it. and you're going to go through that at a different rate. You need both. You need the change and you need the acceptance of the change for the change to be effective. And you can't get acceptance of a poorly defined change. So if we go back to the poll, obviously where we'd got sort of, lack of vision, or vision was unclear. If the vision's unclear, then you're not going to get acceptance of the change. It's going to be harder. So that's why it's key. And obviously communication is all part of that as well. So change acceptance. So we know that change is ultimately about people, and if they don't change, then nothing significantly changes. And we've already talked about how that it's deeply personal. This is a term that I really like. I've actually pinched it from a presenter that did a webinar for us for the Enabling Change thing a couple of weeks ago, and it really resonated with me that emotion trumps logic. People get very emotional about things that are going to change, that affect them. And the logic of it just goes out of the window because the emotions are there. The emotions are so high that the logic goes out the window. And obviously, once you realise that, you think, yeah, that's why people behave the way that they do. Change is really around the what, the why, the how, and the who. And it's about making that transition. And as I said earlier, it happens one person at a time, one day at a time. It's not instant and everyone's different. Organisations that implement frequent change understand the extent, timescales and the complexity of the leadership and the management involvement to get those people from resistance and not wanting to be part of that change into being committed and accepting the change. And project management and change management really need to go hand in hand. Change, obviously, the statements at the bottom, change is inevitable, but growth is optional. So, the change is going to happen anyway, whether you come on board with it or not. But obviously, it's better if you do, and it'll be less painful for everyone, for the organisation and the people involved. As you say, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But change management is obviously about helping those people move forward. And then there's a nice statement there from Stephen Covey. Begin with the end in mind. So when you're planning, when you're doing your project plans, you really need to focus on the change management aspects. They need to go hand in hand, and you need to sort of paint the picture. So what does the end state look like? And how do we get to that end state? It's all about sort of creating that vision and setting the stall out of what the new world will be. And I think that's really, really important, that's done sort of at the start of the project so that everyone's got the same view. We'll come on to some of the tools that can be used shortly. So, next is another poll. Oh, actually, this isn't a poll. My apologies. This should be a slide. I think sorry, apologies. There's been an error there. I was just going to talk about who will actually manage the change. So I'll just move on. So it can either be a project manager, or it can be a change manager, or there are people called change agents. So a lot of companies now, and change management is probably where project management was 10 or 15 years ago. Change management is taking off in a big way. You'll see lots and lots of jobs now advertising for business change manager or change manager, and also change agent is used as a term. So really a project manager can also take on the responsibility of the change manager, and they can be an all-encompassing project and change manager, so they can deal with both sides of the change, or they can be dedicated to project and then you have a separate project manager, or you can have a change manager that's a consultant, someone who's brought in just to do the change management processes, that works very closely and very aligned with the project manager. Or that change manager could be an internal resource, or you can use here. Sorry, they also use the term change agent. So a change management change agent can be used simultaneously for the same role, or you can have a change agent that is actually a department head, for example. So if you're making a change to a procurement department, you might have a change agent for that procurement department that would then be responsible for the change management activities within that department and within their working with their peers. So you could pull someone out of the day-to-day business as usual to do the change role. And you will see, obviously, change agents, that word is becoming more and more common. I'll move on. So to manage the change, you really need a change model or a change methodology. And there are a number of them. There's loads of them out there, but I've just highlighted sort of 4 of them here. These are the most common, really. And these take you through just a series of a process, effectively. So there's Kotter. John Kotter developed the 8 steps. You might have come across him before. So the eight steps of change, that's all about sort of creating the climate for change, engaging and then enabling the organisation, and then implementing and sustaining the change going forward. So that's the 8 steps. You may have also heard of a book that he wrote quite a while ago called The Iceberg is Melting. There's quite a nice little story around change management about a number of penguins that are on an iceberg that's melting. But it's quite a nice little story, and it sort of focuses on those 8 steps in a sort of easy way. So if you've probably already seen that previously. There's then Lewin that looks at a different type of change model that looks at unfreezing an event, changing it, and then refreezing it, sort of a 3-step model. There's Procise AGCAR model, which is quite common as well. And then there's one that I particularly like and favour, which is Change First, which is a wheel, which I'll come on to in a minute, which is a 6 critical success factors for change. But there's loads of others, and obviously it's about finding the best one for you. A lot of companies have a hybrid of 1 or 2 models, or they've got an element of one model and then they've developed their own tools that fit into that model. But yeah, there's no hard and fast rule to change management. So I'm just going to use this to illustrate. It's a model that I particularly like. I'm not advocating it at all, but it's just to use it as just to give you a flavour of what the different areas are to look at in change management. And I think this one does it quite nicely. This is Change First. You can look up website, but I'm not going to cover all the areas in detail, but I'm just going to cover a few of them just to give you an idea of what's needed from a change management model and what it sort of drives. So if I look at, sorry, I'll go back and just look at that in more detail. So you start really with the shared change purpose, which is the sort of the blue one at the top, and that's sort of about creating a shared vision, if you like. Then effective change leadership, how you're going to lead the change through the organisation. Powerful engagement, so how you're going to engage the people that are affected by this change and how you need them to behave and act. Committed local sponsors, so that's really looking down a level. So you're looking at the local sponsorship for the change. So you might be looking at department heads or first line management level. How are you going to get them committed, and how can they drive the change through to their direct reports? Strong personal connection is the next one, really about creating a connection for that individual for the change that's actually happening. And then after the change is in, how do you sustain that personal performance, and how do you keep getting better and keep continually improving? And this is at an organisational level, and it's also at a local level. So if we look at the first sort of one as an example, so shared change purpose. So this really is about setting your stall out, creating your vision, letting everyone know where you're going, and making the case for the business change. So 2 of the elements that came out of the poll that we did earlier were unclear vision and business case, unclear business case. So this would help sort of iron that out. it's about successfully sharing that purpose. It's about getting people to see the areas that they're dissatisfied with in their current ways of working and the things that are going to get better. It's also really about making them aware what they're going to start doing, what they're going to stop doing, and what they're going to continue doing. What you don't really want to do is get people to think, well, I'm going to lose all of this and everything that I've invested in, and I'm going to move to something else. You really want to try and retain some of the good work that people have already done, some of the good things that they've already got in place. If those can be retained, that helps with the change going in. But what you don't want to do is harness yourself too much to the old ways of working. It's about achieving a balance. It's creating a vision where people have a positive and clear picture of the outcomes of the change, and obviously then giving them a set of milestones to show the plan, even if it's a high level plan, but about where we're going, what the end goal is, and creating a sense of urgency really by selling the story and the vision of what that change will bring to them. And that in turn then creates momentum. Everyone's got a clear understanding of the change, their objectives, their benefits, and it creates a bit more of a momentum for the change. Everyone's then on a level playing field. We all know where we're moving to. We all know what the next step is. And they also, more importantly, understand what it means not to embrace the change and what the status quo will mean. Very often, obviously, there's different drivers for change, but if you've got sort of a political or an environmental or a legal driver for change, then obviously staying status quo, that might not be an option at all. We've got to move forward. We've got to do something different. Effective change leadership. So this really provides the compass for key people committed to the goal. So change leaders within the organisation obviously need to provide the direction, the guidance and support the change. And they need to be seen to demonstrate their own commitment to the change through their actions and their words. And a lot of companies fall down here because you have a project sponsor and that project sponsor might not really believe in the change that they're sponsoring because they've just been put in that position, or they lose interest, or they move on to something else, or they start to add benefits, other types of benefits and changes to the original one and try and get more out of it, but don't communicate that to the people. So you really do need an effective change leadership and an effective change sponsor that's going to sponsor and turn up for all the meetings and be the actual driving force and basically walk the walk. The next one really is about powerful engagement. So this provides you with the maps so that you can effectively avoid the pitfalls and find the safe routes and uncover any shortcuts. So it's about employees' involvement and their commitment to and the satisfaction with the work. And there's really sort of 4 concepts of powerful engagement. So there's involvement, so it's involving people in the change. Learning, so that needs to be hands-on. So as much hands-on experience that you can give. So if you're implementing a new IT system, for example, or a new application on a phone and new phone app, you want to get them playing with it, you want to get them looking at it, and you want them to give some input. Rewards, so how are we going to incentivize people to change? No, and that doesn't have to be money at all. That can be something different. It could be when we put this change in, we're all going to go out for a meal, or we're going to have a bit of competition, or sort of leaderboards, or anything like that. And then communication is key, obviously, to create clarity, and that needs to be continuous as well. It can't just be, right, we're doing this and that's the end of it. It needs to be continuous communication. And even if you don't know all the answers, it's better to communicate in some way, shape or form than to not communicate at all and let the rumour mill run riot. We've all been there. So to move on to communication, obviously projects are undertaken by people and all projects are ultimately social events. Communication is obviously how we communicate to people, and that can be different formats. So it's about having the right communication for the right stakeholder groups. So it's about identifying those key stakeholders and those key people that are going to be affected by the change, and then communicating them to them in the best way possible for them. So you need to go through a communications design, and you need awareness that it's not all about reporting data on a project and where we are. It's about shaping reality. And it's not a burden. Communication, I know, has certainly on projects that I've worked on, has been seen as a burden, too onerous, too much work, just stick an email out or whatever. And that's really not the way to communicate with people. It's really important in communication that you've got feedback loops, so that people can have an avenue to feed back their concerns or their opinions. You can't have one-way communication. When you're initiating a change, people obviously feel they might not have enough time, they've not got efficient coaching or support, they don't see the relevance of the change, they can see issues with leaders not walking the talk. All of these things need to be channeled back to the project team or the change team so they understand what's happening. When you're sustaining that transformation, there's obviously anxiety within people. They might be unsure about their job security, learning new skills, trusting others. They might feel a loss of control in the new world. And you need to understand that. So it's really, really important that the communications are open, and obviously people have that availability and that they can make their voice heard. So you need a sort of culture, a focus group might be a good idea, but that can't be seen as a sort of cult activity, but you might have a focus group. And you might rethink, you need to give meaning to the strategy and vision. You need to constantly communicate. An example, we put a new system into a warehouse. They went from a paper-based warehouse to a radio frequency, so handheld sort of devices. And a lot of the people were very nervous about obviously going to new technology. What we did was we made a communications sort of zone where we put up things like where the project was, what we were doing, pictures of the new devices. Then we actually got a device and put that in the communication zone so people could start to touch it and feel it and look at it. And it was all around sort of giving them the comfort. And then we had sort of feedback as well. So they could obviously put things on a board if they weren't sure, or they had people to contact with any questions that they got and anything that was making them feel a bit nervous. And that was really good. That really worked well. So moving on to committed local sponsors. So this is really about enabling your middle and your first line managers to take responsibility for the change in their area, in their authority. They can shorten that change journey. They've got useful local information and local knowledge, and having them as part of a project team is really key. They can be seen ultimately by the project team as barriers to change, and it's important that you empower them so that they become enablers for change. So this is where sort of the term, you might hear the term change agent, because this type of person can be your change agent in that area. So they need to commit to the change. They need to understand what's going to change in their area. They need to lead that change through. And this connects the need for the organisational change to reality, and it's the people that are really going to have to change. So they're obviously key. So a change agent or a manager really acts in the consultancy type role, but it can be someone from an operation. And there's 4 aspects that need to be addressed. So Peter Block in 2000 recognised that with sort of line management level, during changes, there can be some elements that of uncertainty. So they can have mixed motivation. So line managers, they'll have a vested interest in how things have been. They'll have invested in their own area or their own processes. And they need to be clear about their own doubts and questions. And a change agent or someone who's independent can help them be authentic about their own feelings. and can build trust with them. They will have also, it may have concerns around exposure. So they may be exposed in their position. They can be concerned about losing control. Obviously, their reputation and their position, they may feel threatened. And they may state they're committed to the change, but then not behave in that way. For example, not turn up to meetings or etc., or be doing something else. And it's all really about understanding the pressures they're under. If you can pull people out of a business as usual role into a project and enable them to be sort of your change agents and push the change through in their area, then you will get a more successful project, and they will run with it longer term, and it will be sustained longer. And then the other two that were on that 6 critical factors, just to touch on those, were strong personal connection. So that's really about translating the needs of the organisation into something that people really buy into and connect with. If they've got that personal connection, then they're more likely to follow it through and to regain some sense of control more quickly. And then the sustained personal performance, that's really about supporting those involved in the change, helping them through that process, adapting to new behaviours, and then obviously giving them the wings to sort of, develop further and enhance things as a result of the initial change through continuous improvement. So just to touch on change management and Agile, because I know Agile is sort of obviously becoming a more prevalent methodology now than waterfall in project management. And it's just to touch on the overlaps really. So Agile, as we all know is about early engagement and iterative deliverables. And this closer engagement means that change management and Agile fit quite well together. So if you're doing an Agile project, you've already got people involved earlier. You're potentially building prototypes or proof of concepts. You're going through iterations of design. You're demonstrating the change working to some degree already. You're creating the vision. You're using pictures, storytelling, user stories, etc. And you can see where the change has worked already, maybe at another site. So Agile and change management work really well together, because obviously you are going through that sort of more closer engagement with Agile that then drives change management behaviour and sort of makes changes more successful as well. Oh, sorry. So just to come on to summary, I think the poll is slightly before the summary, but that's okay. So almost finished, got another few bits to do, but from what I've said so far, what would be your key sort of takeaways from this session? I'd just be interested to know. I think this is a sort of free text answer. If you could just do that in Slido, that would be great. That's great. Some really good stuff coming through here. perfect. I think we've probably got about roughly half. That's brilliant. Some really good stuff on here. Yeah, obviously the change times, acceptance, equal effectiveness has resonated with quite a few of you, which is good. Obviously communication, the personal side, emotional. That's really good. Thanks for your feedback. That's great. I'm glad some people have got some nuggets and some takeaways from that. Brilliant. Okay, yeah, differences between change management. I think someone mentioned earlier that change management, you know, more importantly, what it isn't, which is good. Because yeah, I think that is a common thing that I come across, people getting confused with what change management is and isn't, which is good. Yeah, and it effectively, yeah, it's all about the people. That's great. Thanks very much. That's about half people have responded to that. That's brilliant. Thank you. So just to summarise then, people, projects involve change, people changing behaviours ultimately in any sort of projects. Projects can't be successful if the change is not embedded. It can't stop once the change is in. That's it, finished. It must be embedded. Project managers need to encompass change management within their plans. I think that's key, and I think it's where we haven't got separate change management, which is in a lot of projects. Then it does need to be part of that project manager's or plan, or at least on their radar. Change management is continuous. It's not something that you can do once. It's a process, and it needs to start at the start of a project and needs to finish at the end. And not everyone will embrace a change. It's all about getting a critical mass. You're never going to get everyone through that curve. There are going to be a percentage. It's 80-20 rule. There are going to be some people that never get through that curve, and they will ultimately probably leave and move on, or move on to another department or something. But it's all about getting that critical mass. Just to mention, I am not selling or anything, but it is an APM publication. So the SIG that I'm chair of, the Enabling Change SIG, a couple of years ago did a short book, which is an introduction to change management. There's a picture of it there, it's sort of greeny cover. I think the price is about £15. You can get it from the obviously the APM book tab on the website. It's really for any project or program manager that's managing change. Provides a sort of fairly simple introduction to the discipline with a familiar context, and it's a good starting point for those that are new to managing change. Okay, over to questions. Nina, have we got any questions?
Yes, Donna, there's a few come through on the chat. First off, what about the transformation manager? Do you think this is the same as the change manager, but at a different level in the business?
That's a good question. I think a transformation manager to me, and I may be wrong, but is more a business transformation manager. So who's looking at part of a strategy or an implementation of a business strategy. That's what I term as transformation. But it could be the same thing. I don't know that term.
I imagine there's a lot of the same skills.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Yeah, okay, cute. And then another one, isn't portfolio and program management, doesn't that encompass benefits delivery? If so, are change managers the middleman there between business as usual and the program team?
Are they the middleman? I don't think it's really, well, yeah, I sort of get it. Benefits delivery, yeah, the benefits of the project or the return on investment or whatever. But I think change management's really more around embedding the change and the new ways of working rather than the benefits. I think they are related, yes, because you are obviously driving benefits, and sustaining that change will drive bigger benefits in the longer term. But I think it's more around that change management's really more around embedding the new ways of working rather than purely focused on the benefits.
So more around the people aspect,
yes,
than cultural change rather than the deliverables becoming benefits.
Yeah.
And then there's another comment. Someone says, I'm surprised by the inefficient investment in training. Surely this is critical to project success and benefits review. From your experience, how often does that happen?
Yeah, quite often. Yeah. Yes, quite often. So in the field that I work in, there is training's done either too early, so people forget by the time we come to go live, or it's a sort of very quick sort of show and tell, and people do, and it's a happy path. So this is what happens when everything goes well, but not so much focused on when things don't go so well. So yeah, I agree. It is an issue.
And I guess it's one of those things that you've sort of mentioned, the powerful engagement and the communications and feedback loops. Training is all part of that, and having people sort of involved at different stages.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And then the other question, so what qualifications would you recommend or reading? You've mentioned the book already, but for people to sort of follow up on this and learn more about change management?
There are lots and lots of books on change management. But yeah, I mean, that's a good intro from the APM. In terms of qualifications, there's the APMP do a change management foundation or practitioner if people are interested in getting, a qualification in change management, and that will focus on areas that I've touched on today. But the practitioner's a week-long course, but it focuses on all sorts, like people's learning styles and empathy maps and personas and all of that sort of stuff. That's really, really good. But they also do now a change agent qualification, so it's a bit more of a slimmed down version. If people are interested, I think it's the APMP do those.
Thank you, Donna. That's all the questions that we've got from the group tonight.
Okay.
I think there's some really good takeaways there, and it's lovely to see that the combination of things from communications and team working and leadership and vision and all aspects. So thank you very much, Donna. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thanks, everyone. Hope that was useful. I think the recording will be available. So yeah, hope that was useful for everyone.
Yep.
Thanks for attending.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.